Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll receive insight, inspiration, and advice for aligning your mind, body, and spirit to achieve a fulfilled life and live your purpose with me, your host, Jennifer Spohr. You'll also hear from other leaders who share their inspirational stories and wisdom in living fulfilled, on purpose, and making an impact. If you're a mission-driven leader and you're passionate about learning and integrating all the things that empower you to live and lead a fulfilled, purpose-led life, this is the show for you. Hey everyone, I'm thrilled to welcome as a guest to the show today, Paul Cope. He is an author, entrepreneur, coach, and former corporate lawyer. He transformed his life after finding himself in his mid-30s, depressed and suicidal, despite achieving everything we're told should make us happy. And he's now coaching people around the world to change their lives using what he discovered through his own personal experiences working with a therapist, coaches, and learning from all corners of the globe. Paul, welcome to the show today.
Thank you for having me on. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
Thanks. I'm really delighted to have you. And I paused when I was introducing you just now because as I was reading your bio, I was thinking to myself, Yep. I can totally relate to all of that because I too, several years ago was in another life where I had this well-established career and had checked all those boxes off the list. And it's amazing because so many of us are conditioned to believe that we need to look outside of ourselves, for success and fulfillment. And so we go do that, right? And then for me, once I had done it, I realized, I'm kind of back at square one, right? Because I still feel kind of empty and unfulfilled. So a lot of times, unfortunately, it's those experiences that lead many of us into that journey of rediscovering ourselves. I talk a lot about transformation as well. And transformation implies change, but I really think that this is about, remembering who we've always been, just like peeling back all of those layers of, fear and doubt and conditioning. So anyway, this is not about me. This is about you. So I'm just saying I can relate to what you were saying there. So I'd love to just kind of kick the conversation off and just tell us a little bit more about, what was that defining moment when you decided that like enough was enough and that you needed to make a change, and tell us more about what inspired you to actually, then share this wisdom with others.
Well, it's funny you should say, before I go into that, it's funny you should say this is not about you, because one of my big things is, this is about all of us. And one of the things I've discovered most through this work over the past few years, really discovering who I am and then sharing it with other people and coaching people all around the world, different genders, nationalities, ethnicities, sexualities. We are all basically the same. And it ties into lots of what's going on in the world right now. We're in another phase of the powers that be, whatever you believe in, all of that, trying to divide us into more categories and more subcategories. And one of the most powerful things of doing this work is understanding just how similar we all are at a very deep level. And going back to your question, it wasn't just one moment. It was, as you said in the bio, I was actually 38 by the time I really started to make changes. I was already living a life that was a bit different to other people. I was already an entrepreneur. I'd already broken away from the sort of 9 till 5. But what I'd moved into was, I always think there's sort of phases of life. There's a part of life which most people are in, which is the one most people are taught to live in, which is you go to work, you work for somebody else, they pay you. And then there's this sort of personal development entrepreneurial world, which is no, leave that behind and do this. And what I noticed was actually lots of people in that world, which is the traditional personal development world, are actually more unhappy than the people who are just living this sort of normal life, because lots of those people I know are quite content. They don't strive for more. And for me, I always say to everybody, whatever works for you in your life is what you should be doing. There is no right or wrong. It's just whatever works. And I'd reached a point where I'd made all these changes to my life to do different things and love the personal development world and love the self-help world. And had built a big business and had multiple businesses. I owned multiple properties. I was married to a beautiful woman. I drove a fast car. And I just reached a point, and it had happened time after time, where I would always say to myself, in 6 more months, I'll be happy. When such a thing happens, I'll be happy. When I make more money, I'll be happy. When I buy one more house, I'll be happy. When I buy this car, I'll be happy. And I just reached a point where I was like, that's not true. I'm searching for something outside me. And a number of things were happening. There were problems in all different areas of my life. So problems with money. So I was making lots of money but never had any, which is a common one in for business people. I had problems in my marriage. I had health problems. I had problems with my employees. And I just got to a point I thought, there's got to be more to life than this. There must be. Even when I was a lawyer, I was always interested in finding the root causes of problems. So when clients would come to me, I'd be saying to them, look, this is not in my best interests to solve your problems. To let everyone in on a little secret, things like lawyers and doctors, if they solve the root cause of your problems, they're out of a job because they need problems to keep them in a job. So lots of lawyers will happily just have clients come to them all the time with another problem. And I used to say, well, why don't we just solve the root? And that doesn't go down well in that profession. So when it came to my own life, I thought, well, I need to practice what I preach. Why don't I start looking at what the root is? And that's when I made the biggest decision I made was to start working with a therapist when I was 38. So that's just over 3 years ago now. And it just had this knock-on effect and snowball effect to where I am now.
Mm-hmm. There's so much I'd love to elaborate on in regard to what you just said. One thing in particular I want to talk a little bit more about is what you said about how, getting to the root of a problem wasn't something that was, smiled upon per se in the profession that you're in. But you know what I've discovered is that, especially in this last year or two, with everything being shaken up so much, that happens in the personal development industry too. I see other leaders out there that are providing solutions that are more band-aids to a deeper wound, which actually can keep people in that place of coming back for more. Does that make sense? Because similar to you, I also believe, some people may say this is not the most profitable way to run a business or whatever, but I believe in helping people align with their higher path and rediscover themselves and get to a place where they're empowered and they're confident and they're clear in what they want to do. I just thought it was important to mention that because I definitely see it in personal development industry, and I'm sure that same thing is happening across many different industries.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's one of the reasons I don't like the traditional personal development and self-help worlds very much these days, because now I've come to the other side of it. All of the work I do, pretty much, to boil it down, goes back to our childhoods, goes back to how we've been created as people, and comes back to the idea that we all have low self-worth and low self-esteem. So it leads to the feeling of I'm not good enough. And that I see a lot in the personal development world. That ends up, it results in, on the point you're making, when people are building businesses, they're thinking more about themselves than their customers. They're thinking more about, well, what will happen if this customer leaves me? I won't have any money then. And that's all tied up in low self-worth and not feeling good enough. The work I do focuses entirely pretty much on empowering people to feel good enough about themselves. And I always say to people I work with, I practice what I preach. So my job, first and foremost, is to make sure that I feel good enough. And where that comes to in my work is my number one priority when I start working with a new client is to put myself out of a job. I want to get everybody to a point where they don't need me anymore. That's the whole goal of this. And it should, I look at people over the years, personal trainers, even I love using the analogy of helping someone to ride a bike. When someone learns to ride a bike for the first time, they start off, I don't know what you call them in America, we call them stabilizers, the little like trainer wheels on the back.
Oh, training wheels. Yeah, that's the common term here.
Yeah. So yeah. I always have to clarify this, especially with my accent as well. So if anything doesn't make sense, or if I say something doesn't make sense, tell me. So I always say to people, when I was learning how to ride a bike, I started with the training wheels, and you'd happily go along by yourself. And then you start feeling a bit bigger and you start playing with the big kids and they don't have training wheels. So you want to take them off. So then what happens is I was riding around my garden and my dad would hold the seat to make sure I would stay upright and wouldn't fall off. And then one day I thought he was holding the seat and he wasn't anymore. He'd let go. And I turned around and I was riding the bike by myself. And then
Yeah.
as soon as I realized he wasn't holding the seat, I fell off. And I use that analogy all the time. It's like, that's my job. My job is to help you go from training wheels to me holding the seat to you doing it by yourself. And then
Yes.
that's success. That's success for me.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to say that, you know, I do have some clients that I've been working with for quite a while, but the difference is that they've achieved the initial goals they set out and now they're looking to up level, right? So
Yes.
they're in a place where they're empowered, but now they're looking to take things to the next level, which I am a big proponent of, because I believe that we're all eternal students and that one of the reasons why we're here on this planet, you know, is to have that human experience, you know, to be able to learn. But it all goes back to what you focus on, which is getting to the root of the problem, right? So I love the work that you're doing. I'd love for you to tell us more about your book, which is titled How to Solve Any Problem in Life, the Root Causes of Everything, because I have to confess, I did not have the opportunity to read it prior to our interview today. So I'm looking forward to hearing about it as well. So take it away.
Well, firstly, I don't blame you one bit. As I was writing it, I was like, I think this is a bit big because I've written a book before. It was about
Mm-hmm.
50,000 words, which is about an average size book. And I was writing this, and it crept up past 50,000 words. And by the time I finished, it was 160,000 words. And I've just had the first copy because I sent you the manuscript, didn't I? I've
Yeah.
had the
Mm-hmm.
first copy back from the typesetters now, so they put it in book form, and it's 650 pages or something. So it's basically
Wow.
three books in one. So I had to get to a point where I said to myself, I don't need to put everything I think about everything in this book. I can hold some stuff back. So the book basically takes people, because my mission now is to get this information out to as many people as I possibly can. When I like to talk, I love superhero movies, and there's lots of stuff about superheroes and different messages from different old stories in this book. And I always say to people, I think if I have a superpower, I would love for it to be able to fly, but that hasn't happened yet. What I can do, I think, is take in a lot of complex information and to put it into a form that makes sense to a lot of people. So what I found when I was going through my transformation and learning lots of things was I was reading lots of psychology books and reading lots of very dry information. And as a former lawyer, I'm skilled at doing that. I don't enjoy it, but I can do it. And I
Yeah.
would read things and think, most people are never going to read this book. It's really painful. And then my job is, right, well, how can I get this information and put it in a way that most people will understand and they'll want to read it? So I put lots of stories in, and I talk about superheroes, and I talk about my dog, and I just like to put things in a context that makes more sense to more people, because the whole idea is, as you know, working with one-on-one with people, there's only so many people you can coach at once, and it's quite expensive. So the idea of the book is it gets the same message out to as many people as possible, and it takes people through the entire, if you were working with me one-on-one, the entire process. So right from start to finish, and it's packed full of exercises that I do with people that helps them get breakthroughs. Something I've got a lot of clients who used to see therapists, and something that's a huge compliment because I'm not a qualified therapist, but they often say the work we've done is more powerful because it's proactive. It's not just going over old things. It's actually doing exercises like going to the gym. I love the analogy of going to see a personal trainer. Like, I can give you the information. I can tell you what weights you need to lift. I can tell you how often you need to train, but you've got to do it. I can't lift the weights for you. And that's what the whole book is about. It's packed full of this information, and it's in three stages basically. So the first phase is called Heal, HEAL, and that's all about going back and finding out. I always talk about the human we are today. We always just think of us as this one thing, but actually we've been created by lots of other humans. We've been programmed since the moment we were born. We were
Mm-hmm.
born and we were like a blank laptop, like a computer. with only minimal programs in it. And it depends what your belief systems are as to what you think those programs are. It doesn't really matter. But there's only a few programs. Everything else is put into you by the people who raise you. So usually your parents, but it depends how you were raised. So whoever your caregivers were, could be a foster home, could be grandparents, could be auntie and uncle, brothers, sisters. And they create this person. So the first thing we do is go back and we figure out how that happened. And then the second section of the book is called Transform. And that's all about, once we've stripped away all this programming that you've already had, we then figure out who you actually want to be as a human, who you were born to be, and we help build that person. And then the third part of the book, I thought, if you're going to be confident enough to call a book How to Solve Any Problem in Life, you should give some examples at the end as to some big problems that are solved using this. And that's what I've done. So the whole principle of the work I do is, it doesn't matter what the problem is. We're all distracted. It's like whatever problem you face as a grown-up is a manifestation of decades worth of programming from when you were a kid. That's the root of all of the work I do. So we stop being distracted by whatever the problem is, and we go into the root, and then it transforms everything.
Mm-hmm. I can see why the book would be a bit longer. Is it going to be on Audible?
Yes. That's
I'm
my
an
next
Audible
job.
person myself.
Me too, 100%. Every time I'm one of those people, I don't know whether you are, I'm always ordering books from Amazon, and they just pile up, because I like to listen to things while I'm doing other things. So I can go to the gym, or I can go for a walk and listen to a book at the same time. So the sound engineer has literally sent the finished version to me today to check.
Ooh.
So it'll be on Kindle, on paperback, and on Audible.
That'd be great. And what, I don't think, if you said it, I didn't catch it. What was the release date of the book?
It's likely to be, so we're recording this on 28th of July. So it's likely to be the 6th of August, something like that. Or maybe
okay, so by the time this airs, it'll be out. So good. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, just wanted to make sure that we were clear for the listeners on that. Yeah, I believe so much of what you shared, and I believe that each of us have a soul also, and that our soul is eternal, and that when we come here, we're in our natural state, so of joy. Like if you look at a baby, right, is a great example, just the simple things that bring them joy, and how present they are, just discovering everything and really just being present to everything in the moment. I believe that's our natural state. And then, as you said, what happens is that we, especially in our earlier years of childhood, we're experiencing a lot of firsts during our time here. And so that's when all of that other programming comes in. And then if you're fortunate enough later on in life, right, to become self-aware enough to realize how some of those patterns don't serve, and then, as you said, be able to break them. In the work that I do, I believe passionately that everything is connected. And so aligning the mind, body, and spirit as part of achieving fulfillment, I believe, is really important, which I feel like is similar to what you were saying, because you were talking about, like the values and the transformation part of your book in terms of someone getting clear. What role do you feel spirituality plays in that process of rediscovery?
I think it depends. Firstly, I think you'll love the book, by the way, because it sounds like it's right in line with what you think.
Yeah.
And one of the big things I talk about, I agree with you completely. I use the example of children and the way they experience emotions, because a big part of the work I do is about how we repress. We were taught as children to repress our emotions. So if you think about a child crying, when do you ever see an adult cry in the same way a child does? When do you ever see an adult laugh in the way you see a child laugh?
Yes. Yeah.
Children express their emotions the way we should, fully. And we've been taught over the years to repress them, which is part of the problem from the beginning. On the question about spirituality, one of the big things I go into in the book is, and I talk about it in different sections, is the language we use is really, really important in life. And one of the ways I think division is created amongst humans is people have different definitions of the same word. So you could say spirituality to 1,000 people, and they'll
Yeah.
all give you a different interpretation of what they mean by that. So some people will assume you mean religion. So if they don't believe in religion, if they don't believe in a Catholic God or Allah or Islam, they'll say, "Oh, I'm not interested in that." Whereas, and I was raised a Catholic, so very, very religious background. And I turned my back on that many years ago. And the older I get and the more I go into this work, the more spiritual I become. So I believe very much in the power of the universe. And I like to say to people, call it what you want. I don't mind what you call it. If someone says to me, do you believe in God? I say, well, I don't believe in organized religion, really, but I
Yeah.
believe in a greater being. I believe that we live on a magical planet. And I think one of the problems in life, we're getting very deep. This is at the end of the book. I think one of the problems in life is we've completely lost touch with this. Like we've been raised in a
Yes.
society where we think an iPhone is the most special thing we've ever seen in our lives. And I say to people,
Yes.
think of a seed. Imagine if somebody invented a seed and went on Shark Tank with a seed and said to them, they said, what is it? And you say, well, I just take this little tiny thing and I put it in the floor and then I leave it and it turns into an apple tree. And then the apple tree grows apples and I can eat the apples and they keep me alive. No, everyone would think you were insane if you said you'd invented that. It's just in this tiny little seed. And they'd say, how does it work? And you say, I don't know. It's like magic. It's like a magic trick. And the seed is fed by the mud in the floor and by the water from the
Yeah.
sky. And and it's like, where'd you plug it in? What's the energy source? Like, well, that comes from the sun.
It comes from source. Yeah.
But what can be more
I'd buy
magical and
into it
powerful
if
than
you told me that. I'd buy into it. I've had way too many experiences, that can't be explained to be one of those people that questions whether or not there's anything, more that's out there. And I'm really glad that you touched on how different people define spirituality differently. For purposes of this conversation, spirituality is really that higher power. So it's not associated to any one religion. Religion is largely man-made. And everyone's entitled to their beliefs, right? I work with people. I mean, my business and my practice is very largely spiritually based because I believe that the center and solution to everything in life is basically supporting people in taking back their sense of self and getting clear in who they are. So whether they're Buddhist, Christian, non-denominational, whatever that is, right? I think that I believe that is the key to everything. But thank you. I'm really glad that you touched on that definition because you're right. Different people can really, they look at it differently. So, we could go down quite the rabbit hole with that topic. But I do want to touch on something else that you mentioned briefly, which is that, we've lost that connection, right? So in terms of like valuing material things and tangible things over the intangible, which it's kind of crazy when you think about it because it's really the reverse. And even if you've heard that saying, which I don't remember who originally said it, but mind over matter, it's true. Every idea, every creation around us started as a thought or an idea and then turned into something tangible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So think about that, even in itself. So people will often say to me about beliefs, and it's like, well, if I can't, we've created, and again, I go into this at the end of the book once I've sort of led people down this path. But it sounds like your listener and your viewer will be used to this type of conversation. We believe in so many things in this world that we can't see or touch anyway. So we believe, everyone believes in electricity. Everyone believes in Wi-Fi. Well, the vast majority of people I know couldn't tell you how to make electricity or Wi-Fi, but they still believe it exists. And for me, what's happened is we created a society and we created a world for the most part where we went down the path where we are, and that just took us further and further away from where we're meant to be. And we're still on that path for a large point, and it depends on what you believe. There's, we're coming to a point where that might change. And I truly think that's what is needed. Everybody I work with, you mentioned things like joy. When I work with people and I take them to a path, because that's the path I went down, we were taught that material possessions, money, success in inverted commas will make you happy.
Yeah.
And it doesn't. I don't know a single person that's worked for. Whereas on the flip side of that, when you realize that joy, one of the exercises I will ask clients to do once we get to a certain point is go through everything that brings them true joy in their life. And when they go through the list to me, it's incredible how few of those things cost any money. It's usually laughing, having a laugh with friends, spending time with family, being in a loving relationship, holding hands, walking down the street, holding someone, cuddling with someone, going out in nature. All of these small things, small in inverted commas probably, because I would say the small things are the big things. You'll never replace those things with buying a more expensive car. I've done that. I bought an expensive car and it was nice, but it didn't fill me with joy. It didn't fill my heart.
Exactly. And it's okay to have those nice things, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I feel like it's important to mention that as well, because a lot of people have money stories like, I can't do good in the world and be wealthy, or you know what I mean? So having money is a good thing, and it's a great thing, and it's even better to leverage it as a tool to make a bigger impact in the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more and it's a really good point to raise, because I was probably part of that crowd in the past that had the belief system that it was a choice. Something I talk a lot about in the book is black and white thinking. We're raised in a society that makes us choose. Think about literally our skin color. It's black or white. I was chatting to a client earlier today. If you had a child and they came in and we didn't know anything, and you pointed at someone who is labeled black and you pointed at someone who's labeled white and said to them, what color are these people? And they said black and white. You'd be like, I don't know what school you're going to. That's not the color black and that's not the color white. We do this with everything. Politics, are you left or right? Well, why do I need to choose? Why can't I like some of what everybody says? Why can't we just have an open conversation about any topic? Why do we need to separate it out? And it's the same with this topic. You can be as happy as you want to be and as wealthy as you want to be and have it all. And the reality is you don't need to choose. I often say to people now, I work fewer hours than I ever worked as a corporate lawyer. I used to be typical 100 hours a week, really stressed, lots of money coming in. It never stayed with me. I make more money now than I ever made. I work fewer hours and I'm content and I'm happy and I'm fulfilled and I'm helping other people to do the same thing.
Yeah, it can be done. Anything is possible. I love that you touched on that, and you're a great example of that. I have a burning question for you. So what you touched on this briefly, you alluded to it. What do you think is happening right now in the world? The shift.
Oh, the shift. I'm intrigued to see. So from a spirituality perspective, again, this is a part of the world I'm only just learning more and more about. Is an awakening, an enlightenment, however you want to define that. I'm intrigued to see what happens next. One of the biggest things about the work I do is I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Like the people who come down this path just end up being very, very curious, very open-minded, very open to what can happen, will happen. I do see a sort of a clash right now between two potential futures for the planet. And it will be interesting to see whether one becomes a more dominant thing than the other, or whether we do end up, again, that could be black and white. We could end up with a division of people who to use movie analogies, people who live within the matrix, and more people who live outside of that. And I am seeing more and more people, especially as we've gone through the past 18 months, who are sort of turning more onto the idea of, we don't need to just listen to what everybody tells us on the news. We don't need to listen to the fear. We don't need to just do everything the government tells us or big business tells us. We can live a different way. And I, even just a couple of weeks ago, I just unplugged for a couple of weeks, and I just turned my phone off, and I told everybody I knew, you can't contact me. Like, I'm safe. This is where I'll be if there's an emergency. But I turned my phone off. I didn't go on social media. I didn't use messaging services. I didn't use the internet. And the world was a lovely place.
Right?
You just
Yes.
spoke to other humans face to face and walked in the
Yes.
woods and played with animals. And so, yeah, I haven't got the answer to what I think will happen next. I'm incredibly intrigued to see.
I'm 100% certain, without a doubt, that our future is brighter. Do I think that the conflict is over? Oh, no. What I've noticed in my experience, what's happening right now on a global level is similar to what we experience as individuals. We reach a place where we keep doing the same thing that doesn't work, right? That's out of alignment. And eventually we get to this place where we are in so much pain that we can't go on the way things were. And that's what I feel like is happening as a collective right now. Systems that just haven't worked for a long time are starting to, come apart, and everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people want change. That's what I see happening.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. The interesting thing is, and it's interesting, I was going to ask you a question that I already have the answer to in my own work, because something you've just touched on, which I love, when people talk about systems and countries and governments, I always say to people, what are those things? They're just a collection of lots and lots of people, lots and lots of individuals. So whatever you do on an individual level, you can't change a system without changing the individuals, because if you
Yes.
And it's one of the mistakes we make. We keep saying we need a different system, and I'm like, it's like the book Animal Farm by George Orwell. It's like, well, if you just change the system and put the same people in, the same thing will happen. We've done that for generations now. So
Right.
I really like your analogy of the pain point, because that's something I talk about a lot. People will make a change when they get to a point where they think, that was my life. I'm not going to keep doing this same thing over and over again. It's too painful. I'd rather change. So that 100%. I was going to ask you, the question I was going to ask was, how long, what do you see the timeline as being?
Answer that question. The timeline, I think it could be like another few years, couple of years, not a long time. I believe it's something that's definitely gonna come to, a head during our lifetime here. I mean, in the near future.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wanted to ask you that question before.
Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but things are escalating,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and you can look at it as a scary thing or just as a natural progression. And I want to say, that doesn't mean I'm minimizing any of the hardships and loss, that people have experienced, which is horrible. But it is a natural cycle. Nature is cyclic. We are, as individuals, there are seasons, and I believe what's happening right now is that what no longer serves us, humanity, is on its way out, and that a more peaceful time is coming in. I really believe that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it ties into as we were saying, the individual work, because I asked you that question about time just to see what your take on it. But when people ask me that question in their individual transformation journeys, and they'll say to me, how long will it take? And I say, I can't say. It depends. It changes. Different people change at different rates. It depends what's happening in your life. It depends what you do. And the same answer is for the planet, I suppose, isn't it? Is that often we have to go through, it has to get darker before it gets lighter.
Yes. Yes, I could talk to you all day about this topic. I'm glad that you made that point because it's true. As an individual, what it comes down to is our willingness, right, to make change. And so as a collective, it's the same thing. How long is it going to take? That answer is based off of my observations of everything that's unfolding in the world. But your point is really accurate in that it's going to take as long as it takes for people to start standing up for themselves, to rediscover who they are, to honor and live in alignment with their values. So yeah, it'll take as long as it needs to take. Hopefully not a whole lot longer, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, just kind of summing all of that part of our conversation up, it's just that it can sound cliche, but be the change. Like, you are the change. The best way to impact change in the world is by looking within first. And when you do that, then you have a ripple effect and you inspire others to do the same.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Really well put. And it's something I talk about a lot, is that I think and I used to be like this, when I used to talk changing the world or wanting to change the world, it was coming from an egoic place. And I think it does for a lot of people. Whereas now what I say to people is, look, we're always pointing the finger at everybody else. Yeah. Go you first, do you first. And then if you help, if you can change you and be the change you want, as you just said, and then you can help one other person, and that person helps one person. That's literally what viral growth is. You can change the planet just by changing you and helping one person change their life.
Yes.
And if everyone did that, it would change rapidly.
I agree. Paul, in closing, is there anything else that you're feeling guided to bring forward?
Oh, I could talk to you all day about all of this stuff. One of the big takeaways from the work I do is just to touch on what you've just said again, is a taking responsibility point of we are more than ever now guided to point the finger at other people, to blame everybody else, whether that's in our personal lives or more publicly on social media. My big thing is always bring it back to yourself, but bring it back to taking responsibility, and more than anything else, being kind to yourself. Because one of the reasons we can be unkind to other people is we're already being unkind to ourselves inside our own heads. So taking responsibility, bringing everything back to us and being kind and going from there is the building blocks for everything.
I love it. Priceless advice and wisdom. Thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Awaken on Purpose podcast. Please visit me and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or at awakenonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can achieve a fulfilled life, live your purpose, and make an impact as a mission-driven leader, visit me at jenniferspore.com. And while you're there, be sure to join Awaken on Purpose, the community, to connect, collaborate, and grow in business and life with others who are like-minded.